You're listening to
They're going to call it a hard foul. They're going to call it a hard foul.
A foul. Pritchard with a rebound. And this is spinning. Peyton Pritchard will dribble it out. Another masterpiece from him in the regular season finale. And the Boston Celtics finish the year 61-21.
The season is finally behind us. Yesterday was actually the first game I've missed all season. I still have not watched it because I had a prior commitment, a personal commitment. But they're going to call it a hard foul and brought to you by the what, Mike?
Fans First Sports Network, bitch.
That's right. Fans First Sports Network. Thank you for having us, and always happy to be part of that family. Mike, the season's over. We discussed before the pod how we want to do this today. I think for the listeners, we're going to talk a little bit of a season preview, but since we're doing that all year, we don't have to dig in too much. Maybe grade out what the Celtics have done and look ahead on their opportunity to repeat and maybe obstacles that are in their way. And then go around and preview, Mike, the first round matchups that we know of. Obviously, with the playing games, there's still a few matchups to be determined, but there's some pretty good ones that we can talk about. How does that sound to you?
Can't wait.
Can't wait. All right. Let's talk about these Celtics.
Let's do it.
Another 60-win season, a 61-win season.
Yeah.
They had the fourth best offense in the NBA going into yesterday's game in the history of the NBA. They were a team that at times looked extraordinarily dominant, and then they had a 2-month stretch where they were pretty average. When healthy, this team looks like it could still be a juggernaut. Their point differential was a +9, which really bodes well for if you're looking at historical numbers for championship teams. But still, that was only third best because you had two other really dominant teams in the league this year with the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Cleveland Cavaliers. So where we sit right now, Mike, how do you feel about this team going into the playoffs?
Championship of bust, man.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you this, though. The one concern I have is I saw something on X where it was saying Jaylen Brown got, some treatment on his knee, and it looks like they filled him up with something there, shot him up. I see stuff like that. I get a little nervous about not just this season, but moving forward. So we'll see what we get from Jaylen Brown. I certainly think they need him to be Jaylen Brown, but they might have to figure this out without him. And I think they're the favorites, but it's definitely going to make it tougher without a fully healthy Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, Ramona Shelburne, and people can go look up the report. Brown received injections in his knee to manage pain. There's some reports out there that it's to enhance recovery, and there's some, contrarian reports to that. I guess
I hope it's steroids.
Yeah, well, I guess I just don't know, and I guess none of us know what it's going to look like. It certainly will be a problem against certain teams. You look back at what he was able to do to Luka in the finals last year, and
Exactly.
it's his strength as much as anything on the defensive side that you really, really need. He's just a big, strong guy, and if you don't have that base in your lower body, that's going to really hinder his ability to be that point of attack defender that he's kind of prided himself on. And I think that as much of his offense is important, I think that is such a critical piece for the playoffs that it bears watching. And I got to tell you, Mike, if it's the Magic, I think we'll have an opportunity to see pretty early on how his knee is holding up because the Magic are a physical team. They present some opportunities with guys you have to cover that are kind of big and strong and difficult to keep in front of you with Banchero and Wagner. So, yeah, absolutely. He's a concern.
Yeah, it's a big concern too. as you bring up some of these matchups where, especially in the NBA Finals, I think is where he would be missed the most. Whether he's covering a Jalen Williams or if the Lakers make it, he's covering a Luka, or the Clippers get there and it's Kawhi Leonard, or James Harden, where he's been a real James Harden guy in the past. There's so many matchups where he would be needed in that finals where I feel like the East, you might be able to get away with it, even against Cleveland, if you have a healthy KP. But to get over the top, defensively, he makes a big difference. A big difference. I think about Luka and what he's able to do. If Brown's not healthy, that would become a problem for the Celtics. A matchup that they've really dominated because of Jaylen Brown suddenly isn't there anymore. That would be a problem.
Yeah, and I think even more would be magnified against the Thunder because of all the different guys they can attack you with and their size
Yeah.
and strength, and he struggles against them already. So it would magnify that even more for the Celtics. But it's a long way to go. You got to get there. To me, you brought up, championship or bust. I'm almost there with you. I think it's more finals or bust for me. I think, if you get into a matchup against the Thunder, I think the Celtics are a slight favorite, but by no means, to me, would they be overwhelming favorites in that matchup. In fact, the Vegas odds actually will tell you differently right now that the Thunder are the favorites to win this thing. And the Celtics would be a slight dog in that series. Yeah, so I think if they went to the finals and they had a drop down, drag it out series that went 6 or 7 all close games, I think I would. I don't think I could come on the pod and say they underachieved or anything. I'd be disappointed that they didn't win, but the Thunder are certainly worthy enough opponents where if they won, I don't think it would be a shocker by any sense.
And I think one concern for the Thunder and the Celtics going into this is, can Chet Holmgren and Kristaps Porzingis make it through this playoff run? And I think that's a big question for both of these teams. With the way these two guys are built, the physicality of the postseason, and I'm not calling these guys soft. They're just big guys, and these foot injuries come up, these weird leg injuries with guys like this. It is hard to make it through a postseason in the NBA healthy, and those are two things I'd be looking at with those two teams. If Holmgren and KP stay healthy, I don't know how you can pick against either of those teams to not make it. But I think those are big question marks for both of the out west and here in the East.
Yeah, I think it's bigger for the Celtics. I think the Thunder with Hardenstein are able to survive that a bit more in the way they're built. And obviously, early in the season, they didn't seem to lose much when Holmgren went out. But for the Celtics and KP, I do think he's a huge X factor this year. I think he's the thing that really separates them from Cleveland. If KP is healthy, I think the Celtics have huge matchup advantage there on both sides of the ball. If he's not, you kind of saw what Cleveland was able to do late in that game in the fourth quarter, both seeking out matchups and letting Mobley just kind of dominate the glass and the fourth. And we certainly point to Donovan Mitchell a lot in those type of games, but I think it's more the KP factor of whether he's healthy or not that separates them. I will say this, KP's game played going into the playoffs last year versus this year, there's a bit of a difference. I'm looking up right now, but I don't think Porzingis played more than 50 games this year. Not even, right? Did he even play 40 this season? So
I'm not sure. He missed a lot. He's missed a lot.
Yeah, so it's not like there's a lot of wear and tear going on right now. So he played 42 games. So he played just a little over half the season. So he should be going in pretty fresh. He should be going. I think he is going in playing the best basketball he's played all year. There's been no sign of wearing down the stretch with him at all, where you kind of be concerned with that. Obviously, freak things happen. Last year was Adebayo just kind of stepping on his foot, right? So
Yep.
um, those things are out of your control when those things happen, but hopefully he can avoid them and you go from there. There's rounds they would be okay without him. I mean, if he missed a few games in this first round due to injury, or he missed a few games in the second round against the Knicks, I don't think that would be the end of the world or hugely concerning. But obviously, those latter rounds are where you're gonna need him. You're gonna need him. As good as Cornette and Al Horford have been this year, especially late, I think the separation between those two guys and Porzingis is pretty big, in terms of what your ceiling is.
Yeah, I
Mike,
think a
go
big
ahead.
thing for the Celtics is obviously Holiday's healthy and playing well, and he was a big part of that championship and playoff run last year. So, you go into this feeling pretty good as a Celtics fan because most of these guys are going into the postseason outside of Jaylen Brown, playing at a really high level at the right time. They started the season hot, they ended the season hot, and I think in my mind they're the favorite if they can be healthy.
Who on the Celtics would you say surprise isn't the right word, but outplayed expectations in your mind maybe more than you expected going into the season, or at least met them at the highest level?
I would have to say probably Peyton Pritchard and Luke Cornett. In my mind, both of them had really good seasons this year. Jason Tatum, I mean, had an incredible year. But yeah, those two definitely come to mind.
Yeah, I think Cornette and Pritchard were probably the top two to go to. I mean, what the way Cornette's been, especially um, filling in earlier in the season for KP as a starter, and continuing to be a rotational player. I actually wonder how the Celtics are going to use him, especially in these earlier rounds. I do think they'll find minutes for him in these earlier rounds in the playoffs, whether it's even if it's like 8 to 10 minutes a game, because he's a useful player and he can relieve the stress on Horford and Porzingis. But to me, it's the guy, and it's tough to say this because he's been so great throughout his career, but it was Tatum for me. I just felt like his game, he, when this team went into its malaise in like January, February, it was his play that started getting them out of it. Once he became a dominant player at the end of February through the end of the season, I felt like everyone else's play kind of rallied around him. He became just a great distributor. I mean, how many net triple doubles did he have that were like 35, 9, and 9? Um, he just seemed to have done everything the game needed for this team. And a lot of times with a lot of guys out, whether it was Brown or Brown not playing at 100%, or Porzingis out, or Al out, or Holiday out, or whomever it was, he was the constant. And I wonder. We talk about Brown's injury. We talk about the question marks of Porzingis playing and how, what he means to this team and can he get through a whole postseason? I do wonder, like, how much Tatum could take on and still elevate this team to get to where they need to go. If guys fall off, like, I don't want to see it happen, but how much can he handle the load if some sort of deterioration happens on this roster in the postseason? Because he's been that good, and there doesn't seem to be much defenses can do to slow him down or take him off what he wants to do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he has been, and they were kind of becoming Tatum dependent there for a while, um, where he was having to make every play on
Yes.
offense, and he was doing it. He was having. We were post All-Star break. We were talking about what what his stats could look like by the end of the season with triple doubles. It was, yeah, he was in the MVP conversation, All NBA first team, definitely. best players in the league, in my opinion. Probably the most complete player in the NBA, and that'll be on display this postseason. It'll probably have to be because Brown's not 100%, and you know that KP's gonna get roughed up a little bit around at some point here. So, um, hopefully that will continue here into the postseason.
Yeah, and just to the point of him like elevating players, the Thunder pretty much dominate the best two-man rating. It's just basically SGA and anyone else um, in the top 10. But the Celtics got in there, and when they do, it's like Tatum and Cornette, with which is like fourth in the league. It's not Tatum and Brown or Tatum and White. So it just shows his ability to like rise up, his teammates.
Yeah,
Um, what's been most disappointing about this team or concerns you have outside of injuries going into the postseason?
I would say not that they're 3 point dependent, but the 3 point percentage at times this year wasn't great, where they just weren't efficient on offense. So that's something to keep an eye on in the playoffs because traditionally, all the time, 3 point percentage goes down, the game slows down, 3 point attempts go down just because of how it's played. So I think that the Celtics at times are going to have to lean heavy on Tatum and his post up game and his mid range game, and the same with KP. Um, and really, I'm hoping to see what Jaylen Brown can bring because his ability to create on his own last year in the postseason was really big when the Celtics were struggling from three. It would become an opportunity for Jaylen Brown to win his matchup against a weaker defender, who wasn't, the top defender would be covering Jason Tatum and taking him away. And it gave a lot of opportunity for Brown to take over games. And so that's certainly a factor that I have is Brown's ability to win one-on-one matchups and how effective Joe Mazzulla is to adjusting when the 3 point shot's taken away to using KP and Jason Tatum in that mid range game when the game slows down, especially in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, so it's interesting. They were a 38% three-point shooting team last year, and I gotta imagine that was one or two. They're 36.8, which is tied for ninth, so still really good. But they shoot so many that it makes up for the point, I think the percentage point differential. I mean, they're still a really good three-point shooting team percentage wise.
Mm-hmm.
The top 10 in the league. Milwaukee and Cleveland are one and two, but they don't shoot nearly as many threes as the Celtics, and they don't defend the three as well as the Celtics either. I think if I'm looking at something that's concerning about their play, and it really it is nitpicking, but I think at times they give up too many. They'll give up too many second point chance opportunities to teams, especially teams that play fast,
Yeah.
and they'll just be out of position and not set, and it can cause, in the postseason when you're talking about margins and you're talking about, games decided by one or two possessions, that could be the difference. And so to me, I really want to see that cleaned up. There's just was too many instances I thought this year where they would let their guard down, especially when you look at stats wise, they're a really good defensive rebounding team, so that shouldn't be the case. And then also, talking about different ways to score. Um, I thought the Celtics, to your point last year, would emphasize when the three's not going to find different ways. I don't know if they did that as much this year. I still think they're very much capable when the playoffs come. So hopefully muscle memory just kicks into that. But I worry about when Porzingis is not in the game, or if perhaps he has to miss a game or two due to injury, just their ability to stop points in the paint. Um, that was clearly a problem, whether it was Cornette on the floor or Horford on the floor without Porzingis. And you gotta, where's that going to start? That starts with your point of attack defense, and that starts with hopefully Jaylen Brown being healthy enough to pick up whoever's bringing the ball up the court and start defending passes. I thought at times they gave that up too easy. So my concerns are more defensive, controlling the glass, and your point of attack defense, which saves you points in the paint. There's things that are out of your control. Like you mentioned the 3 point shooting. look, if they go and they shoot 22% in a game and other team shoots over 40, you're probably going to lose, whether you find new ways to score or not. And that's the risk of with how the Celtics play. And you hope that doesn't happen for a whole series. You hope that you don't play a team that doesn't usually shoot the three that well. Like Orlando's a great example. I don't think they have a guy on the team that shoots over 35%, which is remarkable in 2025. But you over a 7 game series, even a team like Orlando can get really hot. And what happens to you? So I guess there's things that are in their control, and then there are things that, because of their style of play, leave them vulnerable in some ways too.
Yeah,
That you have to be concerned about.
and and this is an opportunity for Missoula to figure out different ways to use Holiday on the defensive end. When you talk about that point of attack, if Jaylen Brown's not at full strength, and Holiday's gotten a lot of rest this year to kind of build up to this moment. Um, and obviously, he was one of the maybe probably the third best player on that finals run last year in the postseason. Because he did so much on the offensive end too, and he's a clutch guy. That's a big factor going into this postseason. If Holiday's right, um, that's just another guy that can really disrupt the game and give a huge advantage to the Celtics. And I think there may be some opportunity for Missoula here to really look at his defensive game plan, especially early on in the playoffs, to kind of take the pressure off Jaylen Brown. And maybe you're using Holiday more with covering, the best guys here. I mean, Holiday's even covered Pablo in the past and had some success. So
Yeah,
um,
he has. He's big
he
and strong.
has.
And I tell you, Mike, went back and rewatched that Knicks game. He was awesome on defense. He was like a menace all over the place. He was deflecting passes off the dribble. I mean, they weren't ending. I don't think many of them ended up in steals. I think a lot went out of bounds. But he was just physical and up in guys' space. He really made things difficult on Brunson, I thought. I mean, Brunson made a few difficult shots, but he just caused havoc everywhere.
Yeah.
He's just so friggin' strong, and his feet are awesome. This is his time of year. I know we had some concerns about him earlier in the year with his shooting and whatnot. Same ways we had concerns with Al Horford, but I fully expect those two guys in particular, to be ready to go and step up in the biggest moments here as we get to the postseasons. I have no concern, and it doesn't sound like you do either, with Drew Holiday going into this thing. I think he's going to be primed and ready to really have some big moments here.
And I think the other thing too is the Celtics to take advantage of what their strengths. And I think in some of these series, it's not going to hurt you to go double big based off the
No,
matchup.
I think they've
And
been
whether,
better double big
yeah,
this year. Yeah,
yeah. And even
than
if
without.
that's like KP sitting down and you have Cornette and Al out there together, like
Mhm.
you can do that. You can play around here, especially early on to see how things look here in the postseason. Because I do think there's value to Cornette with his ability to keep possessions alive in the postseason. That's huge. That can be demoralizing for the opponent. Cornette's got to be one of the best offensive rebounders coming off the bench in the NBA.
And he's
Uh,
exceptional on the lob.
yeah, so
Yeah.
where Al stretches the floor and you have him out there. If Brown's not right, that's something I'd be looking at.
But
Going
they've even gone double bigs, Mike, with KP and Cornette out there together, which is, not something at the beginning of the season you think they would ever do, and it's been quite effective. And you would imagine if it's the Magic in the first round, that's something they could go to. I don't know if you
it
could do
is.
that against the Hawks with Trae Young. I think that's a recipe to get destroyed by that guy. But I do think against the Magic, that's something you could see.
Against the Knicks as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, against the Knicks as well, unless those wings are hitting their shots. Absolutely. Um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things they can do here. That's why I give them a big advantage. And we'll just keep an eye on Jalen Brown. And Jim, did you want to talk about any of these playoff matchups that have been set here out in the West and the East in the first round? I certainly think the Western Conference got some really good ones.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I do. And I guess the last thing I just wanted to say about the Celtics team, and one of the other things that, and this is really getting nerdy, but the way the Celtics have been able to defend the drop late in the season, and I think it's gotten to why they've been able to go to these double bigs. The bigs have just done a really good job of understanding their positioning against these guards and knowing that their contest can be a little bit late because of their size. I think in the past, the Celtics have really struggled in previous seasons where the bigs have been dropping too far back, or they're out of, they come too high, and guards are drawing fouls off them and really taking advantage. I thought over these last 2 months, like whether it's been Cornette or especially Porzingis, they have just handled that drop coverage just at an awesome, awesome level. And I thought it really stood out against Brunson in the Knicks in that last game, where Porzingis really bothered Brunson. I don't think that's something you would have seen in previous seasons. So kudos to this coaching staff of really just coaching up how to defend that because Um, you know, typically, Mike, I think we would have said on pods previous seasons, that's the thing we'd be worried about the most. The
yeah,
Celtics in drop coverage against these small guards, and they've just done a much, much better job over these last couple of months.
yeah, I
Um,
agree.
and you pick the matchup, Mike. There's some really good ones, which, you have the Bucks, Pacers, Knicks, Pistons. These are the matchups that we know about, the Nuggets and Clippers and the Timberwolves, Lakers. Obviously, we're waiting on who the Thunder and Rockets are going to play and who the Celtics and Cavs are going to play, uh, even though we have a decent idea. So let's talk about this first round and preview and make some predictions.
Yeah, I really think that Clippers Denver series is going to be awesome. If Kawhi's healthy and he looks it, what a game by him and James Harden yesterday.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
Um, and obviously Zubac, and then they have Powell. The Clippers are kind of built for the way the postseason's played. Um, with the way they defend, the way they execute in the half court on offense, they play really, really slow. They're probably the slowest team as far as how they play offensively going into this postseason. Um, but they're efficient. And so I just think that Denver Clippers series is going to be really intriguing. Denver obviously fired their coach. What's that going to look like? But I do think that could be a 7-game series with a lot of close games. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
Yeah, no, and you're right. They have a lot of just great size at every position. They defend pretty well. I actually think they're probably a little bit worse defensively with Kawhi in there than they were before. I don't know if he's quite the same defender as he used to be, but he's certainly every bit of the offensive player that he used to be. And that was on display yesterday. Just be able to find space and get whatever he wants. I thought there was a couple of times he just made Draymond Green look stupid. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah, I look at this, and this is the most intriguing series to me because on the whole, like Jokic has been pretty dominant against these Clippers, with maybe the exception of his last game in December against these guys. But on the whole, he's averaging almost 30 games and 30 points and 13 rebounds and 7.5 assists against these guys. But you wonder about Murray's injury, and you just worry about a team that fired their coach 4 games out. Like, how are they going to look? How are they going to respond? I really think I would have picked Denver in this series 2 weeks ago. Now I'm not so sure. Um, it feels like a team that is a bit of turmoil, and I think you get like a bump from a new coach, but how long does that last? And does it
yeah,
really last in the playoffs? Usually those things kind of, they're like putting a fresh coat of paint over a hole in a wall in your home. Maybe it'll last a day or two, but it's not going to work out in the long run. Um, I I think, Mike, I'm going to pick the Clippers in this series, and just with the concerns about the injuries on the Denver side and what's going on in that locker room, There's some real questions. Now, if Denver gets through this series, my outlook on them is going to change for the rest of the playoffs.
Yeah, same.
It flips, but I don't think they're going to get through it. I really don't.
Yeah, I feel like the Clippers could be the surprise team of the playoffs this year, similar to the Pacers last year. I'm pretty high on them. I was really impressed with that win yesterday. And I know that James Harden's got a lot of baggage, but he's had a really good season
Yeah, he was
offensively.
great yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just seems like they're in a good place with Kawhi back on the offensive side, and the Zubac factor too with his efficiency, rebounding and scoring. I just think they're a really good team. And I'd be interested to see what that second round looks like against the Thunder. I think that's a really intriguing opportunity. And I look out west. Even the Lakers Minnesota series. That's another one that could go 6 or 7 games, Jim. It really could. You know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I mean, Anthony Edwards didn't have a great season, but the last 2 weeks of the year, he looked like the best player in the NBA,
Yeah.
dropping 50 like every night.
They've been the most baffling team in the league. There's been weeks where they feel like they're about to go on a run and be a serious contender, and then there's been weeks where they look like a team that hates each other and can't wait for the season to end.
Yeah,
So I don't know, but you know what, Mike? When usually with teams like this that are inconsistent and underachieved, and they show glimpses, usually this is where it ends. Usually it's even if they're going in strong into the postseason, like those warts really reveal themselves. And I think against Luca and LeBron, with their basketball IQ, they're going to find ways to reveal these warts that the Timberwolves clearly have. There's something that's not right about that team to me. And I don't know if it's 5 or 6. I just think the Lakers are going to move on. And that's not based on maybe who has the best talent between the two
yeah,
teams. I just think there's something not wired right with this Timberwolves team.
I agree. I think I'm just hopeful they show up because I just love playoff efficient basketball where both teams are clicking at a high level, um, which I definitely think we're going to get in the Denver Clippers series. And I'm hoping that Anthony Edwards and that Minnesota team shows up because even if they do, I think the Lakers are going to take the series because that LeBron and Luca duos is going to be too much for the Timberwolves. But they just have the ability to be efficient, and I'm just hoping to see that. But I agree with you. Typically, that's what you see is that inconsistency, and when things get tough, those kind of teams just fold. And obviously, things get tough in the postseason, no matter what. So, um, those are the two series out west. But I'm going to be honest, Jim. I don't think Memphis has a chance to win in Golden State. And when we talk about upset alert,
Let's go to the East, and then we'll talk about the play-in tournament right after these two games. How's that?
yeah, I mean, I just think it's a guarantee the 7-2 seed is set out west. I think it's Golden State in Houston, but we can talk about the East. Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think these other two series are pretty good, and then we'll dig into the play-in, and if there's any first-round series from the play-in that we want to talk about. Um, Bucks Pacers, Mike. I
Damn,
think this is
this
the
kills
hardest
me.
one to predict.
This kills me because the Bucks are good defensively since Damian Lillard got hurt, and it's because of one guy, and it's a guy you and me hate because he beat his girlfriend. And he's been playing. I don't know how they got him at the trade deadline from the Clippers, but he's been playing at a really high level, especially on the defensive end, like steals per game or above like 3. I don't know what Doc Rivers has done with this kid, but he's got into his head. And I think because of that, I give them like a 35% chance to win the series. Like if you talked to me a couple weeks ago, I would say like the Pacers in 5, but now I look at this series and I don't know. I give the Bucks a little bit of a chance. Giannis obviously played at MVP level all season,
Hmm.
and now the Bucks are suddenly defending, and this kid looks like he's tapping into that talent that he's always had. I mean, he's had the length, he's always had that body for the NBA, and now, quite frankly, Jim, these last month or so, he's been playing at a really high level, and that
You're talking about Kevin Porter Jr.
I didn't want to use his name. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
been playing great. He
Yeah,
really has.
he's been playing great. hopefully that all falls apart for him in the playoffs. Um,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, no, look, they have been better defensively. The report out though is Dame Lillard is expected back. There's optimism
Oh,
there.
interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
so there's a
Okay.
question of how that really it obviously raises their ceiling offensively. It really lowers their ceiling defensively
Jim,
significantly.
I just got to step off for 2 minutes, so just give me a sec.
And I think it lowers the ceiling defensively against a team that is going to know how to attack this really well. The Pacers move fast. The Bucks are long, they're big, they're kind of slow and plodding. So the Pacers are the perfect team to kind of attack what the Bucks want to do defensively, especially if Lillard's in there. I don't think Lillard has the ability to stay in front of Halliburton or these other Pacers guards that are quick and can score effectively. So I agree with you. This could, maybe I think a 35% chance of the Bucks winning. I think you nailed it. I think that's about right. The other factor we always have to look at with Doc Rivers coach teams is that you know, this series gets late or
They're up 3-2.
they're up 3-2, you can almost put the money in the bank that the opposing team's gonna win the series. If it goes
So,
seven, forget it. It's over.
so
So
Damian Lillard could play despite blood clots.
that's a report by Shams.
Wow, that's
Yeah, that's a
insane.
report by Shams. So
Well, good for him.
yeah, good for
That's
him
good.
for
That's
sure.
great news.
Yeah, yeah.
And no, for the NBA fan, like we haven't gotten to see him and Giannis really together much in the playoff series, and like the whole point of this was the fourth quarter in a close game. Um, how do you stop that 2-man game of the Bucks?
I just don't
And
think it's the same player anymore, though. Yeah,
yeah,
like I get it, and like that was always the thought, but and I guess we'll get to see it a little bit. But that
it's
doesn't scare
intriguing at
me
least.
anymore. Yeah, it is
Yeah,
intriguing to an extent, but that doesn't put the fear of God in me like it did when they made the trade at all. Um, I'm gonna pick the Pacers. Um,
me too.
but
Yeah,
this is one the Bucks could win this series. Like that wouldn't shock me. And um, if the Bucks do win this series and Dame gets going, it really makes that Cleveland series kind of interesting too, with Giannis and potential second round matchup. Mike, this is another one. The Pistons Knicks.
yeah.
Uh,
A couple weeks ago, I would have told you Pistons, but um, I just look at the fourth quarter of those games when it's close and how young the Pistons are, and just that 2-man game of the Knicks with Brunson and Carl Anthony Towns offensively. I don't think the Pistons are a great defensive team. I don't care what the numbers say. I think they have a lot of flaws defensively in that lineup that you can attack. Um, I do think Cade Cunningham's going to have a really huge series, and this could go deep. But I am going Knicks. I think the Knicks take this series.
all right. Here's Kate Cunningham's numbers versus the Knicks this year. And again, I just find this to be funny, and I find this to be a real Carl Anthony Towns problem.
Yeah,
Like, earlier this month, February 10th, I mean April 10th, he went for 36, 2 and 8. In January, 36, 2 and 4. In December, 29, 10 and 15, and then 22, 6 and 6 to start the season back in November. He is just he has just dominated these games against the Knicks. And I think that's not very surprising considering how they set up defensively. I That problem still exists for the Knicks. I think there's real questions on how their wing players are going to show out. I think the series goes deep. I think this is a deep, deep series that, we're looking at 6 or 7. And it would be really interesting to me if this thing gets to 7 and Cade Cunningham has dominated and we're going into Madison Square Garden to see what happens. Um, and we talk about injuries on the Celtics side. I think you always have to talk about them on the Knicks side as we get late into the season, as we saw last year, how these players hold up, how they adjust. Um, and they continue to play hard. They're just not very good. Um, I I I think the Knicks will win. I think talent will prevail. I think there's just, you talk about the two-man game of Anthony and Brunson. I think it is going to be a problem for the Pistons. I don't think Duran matches up against Karl Anthony Towns well at all. I think probably this is more of a beef stew series in that regard if you're looking for some defensive help. But obviously he hurts what you're able to do on the offensive end. Um, I think it's going to go probably seven. I think it's going to be a real physical series. I think it's going to be a mentally draining series for the Knicks, and I think the Knicks will cease to exist
Yeah, yeah. I think,
after this round. You know, so
and I think the Cade Cunningham thing is great, and obviously Beasley shooting
yeah, he's
is
been
going to be a
awesome.
huge factor. But I think Thompson too, and if he's able to drive to the hoop for Detroit and play at a high level,
He's awesome defensively too.
yeah. But he's young, right? He's
Yeah,
really young, and I think young players struggle in the postseason, and that's the one thing I would concern me. I think Detroit's moving somewhere. They could be a top 3 seed out in the East next year, depending on what they do. If Jordan Ivey comes back, like they're moving in the right direction. Duran's really young too. And he's a big part of what they do. And it's so is Cade Cunningham. That's a lot of youth. Um,
they're missing
they could,
Ivy. Remember, they're missing
yeah, they're
Ivy
missing Ivy. Yeah.
on top of all this.
Um,
You know.
and then obviously Tobias Harris has had a good year for them.
Yeah.
So they've brought in good veterans, but that's a guy too. Like you look at Detroit, they don't really have a veteran to lean on. Like Tobias Harris has never shown up in the postseason. Like he's never shows up, especially in the fourth quarter. So that's why I have my concerns, and I don't love the coach in Detroit either. But yeah, I certainly think it could go deep, but I just think the Knicks are better right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they are. I think they'll probably win the series. I think it's going to be a deep series, and I think it's going to be a great showcase for Kate Cunningham. And I think he's going to be really good. I mean, if he isn't, it's going to be a lot of his own accord because he's going to get a lot of open looks against this Knicks team. A lot of open looks. Mike, the playing game. Let's just do quick predictions, and then if there's any, there'll probably only be one series worth talking about out of this play-in for the first round. Hawks Magic. Who do you got? Quick.
Magic,
Yeah, I got Magic too. All right, Heat Bulls.
Heat.
Yeah, I guess. All right, Heat Hawks. This is like, who wants to watch a fucking Heat and Bulls? Like, who actually wants to watch that game? Are you
I
gonna
think
watch it? I'm not
I
gonna
think
watch that game.
the Miami Heat are like a scar you can never get rid of. They're going to be the 8th
This
seed.
is like the annual playing game. Have these guys played every year since the playing? The
I
Heat
think
and
they
the Bulls?
have.
Like, if you're a Bulls fan, this just has to be so depressing. Like, why are you in this playing? Why didn't you just trade off everything and tank this year in an
Well,
awesome draft? Instead, you're stuck in this muddled middle. All right, whatever. All right, Heat, Hawks. Who do you have getting
Heat.
out? I
They're
got
like a
Trey Young.
scar you can never get rid of.
Yeah, I got Trey Young. I got Trey Young coming out of this. The Heat are finally gonna not make the playoffs.
No, they're getting it in. I'm
Uh,
telling you,
it's
like a virus.
all right. So we both have the Warriors. Not
And
much.
then they'll win a game against the Cavs, like on the road, and everybody will talk about Heat culture.
Yeah, they'll
And
shoot
then
like
they'll lose 4-1.
67% for three or something.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right, Mavericks Kings, another game. Like, who's gonna watch
Oh,
it?
definitely Anthony Davis. I'm going with the Mavs.
All right, Mavs and Grizzlies.
Grizzlies.
Yeah, see, I think that I agree. And I think it's going to be a real painful loss for the Mavericks fans because I just think it's the way it's going to go. It's going to be like Anthony Davis missing a free throw to tie the game late in the fourth or something like that. It's
Or
going
he
to be
gets
awful.
hurt.
Oh yeah, he gets hurt with 4 minutes to go while they're up 15 and they blow the lead. It's going to be something like extraordinary like
Although
that.
that Memphis team's a mess. I wouldn't be surprised if they lose both of these games. I would
Yeah,
not be surprised by that.
Morant burnishes a gun midway through the
What a fucking loser he is.
all right, so out of all these, there are no interesting outside of the Warriors Rockets, right? There isn't we shouldn't spend much time. We've broken down the Celtics Magic.
And they're only interesting if Jimmy Butler's healthy. If he's not healthy, that series isn't interesting anymore.
Yeah, so it'd be the Warriors Rockets. Let's assume Butler's healthy and
I got the
Griffin
Warriors in
solid.
that one.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do. They've been playing great. I know yesterday they blew it, and they did blow it yesterday. But I mean, they were at 1 point 18-2 with him. since the trade. I think outside the Celtics, they were the other team that was like 20-5 in their last 25. Um, I think the Rockets, similar to Detroit, are a really good team with too much youth. Um, and I don't know. I mean, they got Van Fleet and they got Dylan Brooks, certainly some good veterans there. But I think that the Warriors can expose some things with the Rockets offensively. They can shut them down pretty easily because I think there's a lot of flaws to that Rockets offense and to that coaching staff when it comes to running an offense. Um, and then, despite how good the Rockets are defensively, Murray, I mean, Murray, um, Curry's going to own those matchups against those guards. And you bring out Sengun to get out and do drop coverage against these guards in Golden State. I think they're going to unlock a lot of hidden flaws with this Rockets team defensively too.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think I'd lean towards the Warriors. I do think Jimmy Butler's going to have to step up. I
Well, he's going to
thought,
have to be healthy.
yeah, and step
Yeah.
up. And step up. Like I thought he was invisible yesterday against the Clippers. I think he's been pretty good for the Warriors. And he's gonna have to give them more. I feel like Clippers kind of exposed um the Warriors late in that game yesterday a little bit when they were doubling. It felt like it was either a Curry like remarkable three or a turnover from about 3 minutes on into the overtime for the Warriors. There wasn't much in between offensively for them. And the turnovers were usually because they brought a lot of size on the Curry double team and he wasn't able to pass out of it or um, or shoot over it. And I do think the Rockets can present that with the athletes they have, especially when you start thinking about guys like Thompson and Green. And I still would lean the Warriors, but I do think there's a ceiling on this Warriors team unless Jimmy Butler like finds that magical touch and looks like he did a couple of years ago in the postseason run because
Yeah, I mean Butler.
they didn't fear Butler at all yesterday. There was
Well,
no
the
fear
first
of
three,
him offensively.
he had 28 through the first three quarters, and then they switched. They switched Draymond. No, not Draymond. They switched Kawhi on to him in the fourth quarter, and he gave Butler a lot of problems. But Butler's been really good for them, Jim.
Yeah,
He's
no,
been really good.
I know. So I would lean Warriors. Mike, the last time the Celtics repeated was 1967, 1968. I guess we'll end this playoff preview where we began. Do they repeat this year?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to lean too. I think this team is better than last year's team. I said that on the last pod. I stand by that. Obviously, health has a lot to do with it, but I think this team is better. And I think the ceiling is higher on the level of play than even last year's team, which is saying something considering how dominant last year's team was. Sounds good. All right, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you.